declined to appear at my dad and his mistress's wedding. Now my family is in uproar, pushing me to forgive years of painful betrayal. Can you imagine being told to forgive a betrayal so deep it festered while your own mother lay dying? My own family, the people who should have had my back, demanded I attend my father's wedding to the woman who helped him cheat on her, and honestly, the sheer audacity of it all, it still makes my blood boil. My world shattered when I was just 17. My mom, my incredible, vibrant mom, was diagnosed with breast cancer. For 2 agonizing years, I watched her fight with everything she had, her strength slowly fading, until she finally, tragically, passed away. During all of it, my dad was absent. Always busy, always on business trips, almost never home. It wasn't him holding her hand in the hospital or sitting by her bed. It was my aunt and my grandma. They were the rocks, the ones who held our fragmented family together, caring for both my mom and me. 5 months. Just 5 months after my mom, the strongest woman I knew, took her last breath, my dad introduced me to his new girlfriend. My world, already shattered, splintered further. I felt this fire in my chest, a white-hot rage at how easily he'd moved on. Moved on? No. My anger exploded when he confessed, right there with her, that they'd been together for 3 years. 3 years. He had been cheating on my dying mother. All those business trips. Lies. Cover-ups to meet his affair partner. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't stay. I packed my things that very day and walked out. I haven't spoken a single word to him since. He was out of my life, completely. The only family member I kept was my aunt. She took me in, helped me rebuild from the ashes, and respected my decision to cut him off. Fast forward to now, I'm 25. Those memories still haunt me, harden me. Then, a few days ago, my aunt called. We chatted. She asked how I was doing. Then she hit me with it. Have you heard from your dad? I told her there was no reason I would ever want to hear from him again. And that's when she dropped the bomb. My dad was getting married. To her. My aunt started talking about mending relationships, about healing if I just attended the wedding. Healing? Why on earth would I do that? I told her, straight up, he's dead to me. A heavy, suffocating silence hung on the line. Then, suddenly, his voice. Is that truly how you feel about me? My stomach dropped. He was there. He was listening in as my aunt called me. The sound of his voice, it was too much. I hung up immediately. Then I texted my aunt, furious, reminding her of my absolute boundary. Never tell my dad anything about me. Never give him access. Her reply was a storm of anger. She lashed out, calling me an asshole for what I'd said, claiming my dad was crushed and that I should have moved on by now. I didn't want to argue with the woman who'd once been my lifeline, so I blocked her. But the next 48 hours? Absolute chaos. A wedding invitation showed up in my mailbox. Only my aunt could have given out my address. Then my phone started blowing up. My dad, uncles, cousins, extended family. Suddenly, everyone had my number. Everyone had an opinion. Some pleaded with me to give him a chance, to attend the wedding. Others hurled insults, calling me heartless. Even she messaged me. The affair partner. The woman who used to be my mother's friend. The one who knew my mom had cancer. She said my dad was thinking of postponing the wedding because of me. She begged me to talk to him, as if I owed them anything. I told her it wasn't my problem if he postponed his wedding, and that I wanted absolutely nothing to do with either of them. They were trying to force a reconciliation I never asked for. Things went quiet after that, but all the angry messages, the sheer pressure from his side of the family, it did leave me conflicted. Still, I know where I stand. I'm sticking to my guns. They can't force forgiveness, and they can't rewrite my past. Update 1. Honestly, all that pressure, it only solidified my resolve. Things were hectic with work, so it took a while to process the next wave of madness. After an avalanche of calls and texts, I just snapped. I sent a single, clear message to all of them, laying out exactly what my dad had done and why I'd cut contact. No ambiguity. My reasons had to be crystal clear. Then, I blocked every single number. I even changed my number, but kept the old one active on a separate phone, just in case they tried a new round of harassment. And for a brief moment, I thought it was over. But of course, it wasn't. About a week later, my aunt's fiancé showed up at my apartment. He clearly knew my schedule because he was waiting when I pulled into the parking lot. I was on edge, hands clammy. He saw it and promised he just wanted to talk. Turns out, my mass text had unleashed an absolute firestorm in the family. Some cousins, who apparently had no clue about the truth, started hounding my dad and her with questions. They got defensive, denied everything. But someone finally cracked, admitting the truth, and it sparked a massive argument. It got so bad that some cousins actually pulled out of the wedding. My dad, supposedly desperate, wanted to postpone the wedding to talk to me, but she threatened to leave him if he did. The story spread even further, reaching some of my mom's old friends. They, too, pulled their support from the wedding. That, apparently, broke her. She reportedly had a full-blown meltdown, banning anyone who brought up the situation, even family members, from attending the wedding at all. According to my aunt's fiancé, she blamed everything on me. She said I did it all intentionally. I actually laughed out loud when he told me. The irony, the hypocrisy, it was just so absurd. Somehow, the wedding was still going ahead. I asked him about my aunt, how all this drama even started. All he knew was that there was a conversation about how bad the family would look if I didn't show, and my aunt had offered to call me. He disagreed with her, he said, but she went ahead anyway. He told me he was there because he thought I deserved to know the truth of what had happened and how things escalated. I thanked him, but told him I was going completely no contact with my aunt, and by extension him. He understood, wished me well, and left. I won't pretend I'm okay. I miss my aunt. God, I miss my mom. But deep down, I know I did the right thing. I'm staying with my girlfriend now. She's been my bright spot through all of this, always coming up with outrageously absurd ways to ruin the wedding just to make me laugh and ease the tension. After everything, I've realized I have so much grief and anger bottled up. It's finally time to deal with it. I'm nervous about starting therapy, but I know it'll do me good. I can't keep living with all of this locked away inside me. Update 2. I logged on today and was shocked by how many people reached out, asking how I was doing, what happened next. I wasn't even sure I should write this, or if anyone would read it, but I figured I owed it to myself to share where I am now. For everyone who wanted to know about the wedding, honestly, I can't say much. All I know is they did get married. Since then, no one from that side of the family has reached out, and I haven't gone looking for answers. I'm at peace with that now. Things have changed a lot since my last update. First, I want to say how much it meant that people cared enough to check in. Your kindness made a real difference. It's hard to put into words. I'm single now. For months after my last post, Mia, my ex, and I went our separate ways. We just celebrated 2 years together in March and started talking about the future we wanted. But I was a mess. Therapy had started well, but I quickly realized I had so many unresolved issues, especially relating to losing my mom. Emotionally, I was all over the place, crying out of nowhere, grappling with twisted thoughts that I might turn into my dad, spiraling with fears I couldn't control. Mia deserved so much more. She dreamed of marriage and kids, and I knew deep down I wasn't in any shape to promise her the kind of future she deserved. It would have been selfish of me to ask her to wait until I got better. So, after a long, honest conversation and a lot of tears, we decided to part ways. It hurt, God, it hurt, but it was the right thing for both of us. The care we had for each other didn't disappear overnight. Mia and a few close friends checked in on me every day after the breakup. I'll always be so grateful for that. I never felt alone. In July, my company offered me a chance to move to their head office in another city. After talking it through with my therapist, I decided a change of scenery might help me start fresh. I took the plunge, moving that September. My best friend, he used almost all of his 30-day vacation just to help me pack, move, and settle in. I can't express how much that support meant to me. My friends are absolute lifesavers. Now, I'm taking things day by day. The new office blew away my worries. Everyone's been so welcoming, and that mattered because I was so nervous about starting over. Therapy continues twice a week online, plus in-person grief counseling here. It's helping, slowly but surely. I'm in a much better headspace now, but I'm still not ready to date again. I'm focusing on my career, taking care of myself, and continuing to heal. One step at a time. Update 3. Since my story started making the rounds on YouTube and TikTok, my inbox has been overflowing. People wanting to know what happened next, how I'm doing, what's changed, what life looks like now. So, I've decided to lay it all out, answering the most asked questions, so I can finally, truly close this chapter. As for my ex-dad and his side of the family, I genuinely have no idea what's going on with them. I haven't heard a single word, not a whisper. Complete radio silence. And to be honest, I like it that way. My world feels lighter without any of that baggage trying to crawl back in. My friend group, on the other hand, continues to be the solid, hilarious, and supportive bunch they've always been. I honestly don't know how I would have made it through without them. People have also been curious about where I live, what I do for work, and what my best friend does, probably because I mentioned his 30-day vacation. For the curious, I live in Europe. That's all I'm comfortable sharing. But let's just say European labor laws truly are a blessing. Here's something wild. Recently, someone actually figured out who I am and sent flowers to my office, attaching a printout of my story with a really kind and encouraging note. I grilled my friends, but they all swore they had nothing to do with it. It was such a sweet gesture, and I'll admit, a little unnerving at the same time. Now for Mia. Yes, we're talking again. We're taking things slow, though. I saw her for the first time since my move at a friend's wedding earlier this year. There's still something there between us, but for now, we're just talking, seeing where things go. As for me, I'm doing so much better these days. Therapy has quite literally changed my life. It wasn't easy at first. I honestly wanted to quit after the first few sessions. But my therapist was patient and stuck with me, and it made all the difference. I even joined a group grief counseling session, which turned out to be one of the best choices I've ever made. I was terrified they'd tell me to just get over it, since my mom's been gone for a while now, but everyone was incredibly welcoming. That warmth helped me really open up. Over the past year, I've grown close to several people from that group. Life's not perfect, but for the first time in a long while, I truly feel I'm in a good place. Update 4. About 6 weeks ago, a thick brown envelope showed up at my new place. Law firm stamp. For a few minutes, I just stared at it on the kitchen counter, convinced it had to be something to do with my ex-dad. It was a notice about a storage unit registered in my mom's name. The rent had been paid up until this spring, then it stopped. My name was listed as the contact before they auctioned it off. The address was from my old city. I called the number, booked a day off, and drove back. I don't know what I expected. Maybe old winter coats and a busted lamp. But the unit was small and almost empty. One suitcase, a banker's box, and a shoebox taped within an inch of its life. The manager handed me a set of bolt cutters for the padlock and left me alone. When I cracked the suitcase open, her perfume, a scent I hadn't realized I craved, lifted out like it had been waiting for me. Dresses I remembered her wearing to chemo when she wanted to feel normal. A scarf my aunt knitted. A stack of birthday cards I'd made as a kid, glitter still shedding onto everything. The shoebox had a label in her familiar handwriting. For him. Inside was a little digital voice recorder, 2 USB sticks, and a sealed letter with my name on it. I didn't open anything there. I packed up the boxes, signed the release, and took it all to a motel. I couldn't face driving back that night. I listened to her voice first. I sat on the edge of a bed that smelled like bleach and lemon and pressed play. There were 3 recordings. The first 2 were small things, stories she wanted me to have in her voice. The day I was born. The time I shoved a pea up my nose. The third one hit like a car crash. She knew. Not in some vague, maybe it's nothing way. She knew. She didn't say how long, or who told her. She didn't name anyone. She said she didn't have the energy to burn down a life while she was fighting to live. She said she made a choice to spend what she had left loving me loudly, and that if I ever found out later, she wanted me to choose the kind of peace she couldn't. You are not him, she said, and you don't have to carry him. I cried until my chest hurt and fell asleep on top of the covers, the recorder still in my hand. In the morning, I opened the letter. It was short. She'd tucked a small key inside. No note about what it opened. At the bottom, she'd written, "If the day comes when you want to put something down, you can." That was all. I drove to the cemetery. It was early and raining, just enough to make the stone look darker. I stood there, talking to her like I always do when it gets bad, telling her about the new city and the quiet. How I kept wondering if she would have told me if she'd had more time. I didn't hear footsteps or a car door, but suddenly someone was there, peonies in her hand, my mom's favorite. It took me a second to place her because it had been years, and she looked smaller, softer, older. The woman who broke our house into pieces. We didn't say each other's names. I stared at the flowers, and she stared at my hands. Then she spoke first. "You don't have to stay," she said. "I'll wait." I told her I wasn't moving. She nodded and placed the peonies at the base of the stone. Her hands shook. She told me they'd separated 2 months ago. Not a dramatic reveal, no tears thrown for an audience. He never stopped lying, she said, even when there was no reason to. She talked about how they tried to build a life on top of something that was always cracking, and how every room they walked into felt like it echoed. She never asked me for anything. She didn't ask me to forgive her. She apologized to my mom, out loud, with both of us standing there, getting rained on. Then she told me one more thing I didn't expect. My mom knew. She'd known because she was the one who told her to stop visiting when the treatments got bad. She looked at me and said, "Not here. Not anymore." She said, I never went back. I didn't have a script prepared for any of that. All I could think was that grief makes cowards and poets out of people, and you never know which one you're going to get. I told her I wasn't going to be part of whatever story she needed to tell to feel better. She said she understood and walked away without looking back. I watched her cross the grass, her heels sinking, her shoulders hunched against the rain. And I felt something loosen that I didn't know I was still clenching. I used the key from my mom's letter the next week. It wasn't to a box. It fit a drawer in an old bureau my aunt had sent with me when I moved, a piece my mom loved, and I kept because it made any apartment feel like home. At the back of the drawer was a false panel I'd never noticed. Behind it was a folder with my name and the hospital's logo. A list of nurses with a sticky note that read, "They kept me safe." There was also a letter from a foundation I'd never heard of. My mom had set aside a small policy I didn't know about, earmarked for something that makes it easier for someone else. I met with the hospital's volunteer coordinator the following day. We're starting a small yearly bursary in my mom's name for oncology nurses who want to take extra training. It isn't huge. It'll cover a course fee, a travel ticket, a couple nights in a cheap hotel. It felt right. It felt like putting something down without dropping it. A week after that, I got one email from an account I didn't recognize, with a subject line that just said, "Please." The first line was, "I heard you saw her." I didn't read the rest. I forwarded it to myself at an address I use as a box in the ground somewhere, to bury things that don't need to be read to be finished, and deleted it. I got a second email 2 days later from the same address. No subject. A file attached. I didn't open that either. I ran into my aunt once, by accident, in line at a bakery near my work. It was one of those awful, slow-moving lines where you're forced to stare at the back of the person who used to be a piece of your life and pretend you're invisible. She turned, saw me, and in the same beat, stepped out of line and walked out. No scene, no cry. I stood there, my number in my hand, a knot in my throat, and ordered a croissant like it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't until I sat down and broke it open that I realized I wasn't shaking. I took that as an answer and left it there. I told my therapist about the recorder, the storage unit, the cemetery, and the bursary. She asked what I wanted to do with the second recording, the one my mom started with, if he ever becomes the kind of man who can listen. I said I didn't know yet. It's on one of the USB sticks at the back of my desk, taped shut with the same tape my mom used for the shoebox. Some doors can stay closed and still count as exits. I saw Mia last weekend. We got coffee after a long walk that turned into 2 hours because the sky couldn't decide if it wanted to rain. We didn't make any promises. We didn't plan a future. We talked about our days and the ridiculous dog our friend adopted and how everything feels different and the same. When we said goodbye, she hugged me, and I didn't feel like I was holding my breath. There's a picture of my mom on my mantle now that wasn't there before. Her laughing, a mouthful of cake, icing on her lip. For a long time, I only kept pictures of her where she looked put together and strong, like I owed her that. This one is messy and real, and in the middle of joy. I look at it when I leave in the morning. I look at it before I go to bed. I don't know if this is what healing is supposed to look like. I just know it finally feels like mine. Update 5. The first check we wrote had my mom's name spelled out in careful block letters and a coffee ring in the corner because the coordinator didn't believe in lids. We cut into a supermarket sheet cake in the break room, under those humming lights that make everyone look a little grayer. And the nurse who got the bursary tucked the certificate under her arm like it might fly away. She said thank you in a voice that made my ribs ache and told me she'd wanted to take the course since before the pandemic, but life kept getting in the way. She didn't know my mom, but she knew exactly who my mom was. Anyway, I had planned to go home after, take the long tram, maybe walk the last few stops if the sky held. My phone started buzzing face down in my pocket and wouldn't stop. An unknown number with the country code bumped up against numbers I recognized from ordering takeout. I let it go 3 times. On the 4th, I stepped into the corridor where the floor smelled like disinfectant and old coffee, and listened to a voice say my last name in a way that pulled something low and hardened inside me. "We have you listed as next of kin," she said. "We're calling from emergency." He came in on his own. "There's consent paperwork. You don't have to." Her voice did a small catch, a practice thing, and then she gave me a room number and a choice, and hung up. I stood in front of the vending machines, counting the rows of candy bars like that would add up to an answer. The USB stick with my mom's label, "If he ever becomes the kind of man who can listen," was at home, taped shut, tucked behind a geometry of receipts. I went home anyway. I took the slow tram, and then the fast one because I got on the wrong platform and didn't realize until the river was on the wrong side of the window. When I got in, I sat on the floor in the hall and stared at the little piece of plastic like it might blink. When I was very small, I used to watch my mom braid her hair in the mirror before work. She'd part it down the middle, pull each section tight, and then weave them together in this steady, patient way, like she was turning chaos into something you could pin. I thought about her hands doing that. I thought about the way she'd written for him on a shoebox and then put it in a place I had to find myself. I peeled the tape. I didn't listen to the file. I didn't play it to see if she had said something I would want to hear first. I picked a pen and a card from the drawer where I keep the boring life stuff, stamps, paper clips, proof I exist, and wrote one sentence. "This is from her, not from me." I signed nothing. I put the USB in the envelope with the card, stood up, and walked back out. The emergency department felt like an airport at midnight, all bright and no sleep. They'd put him behind a curtain that didn't reach the floor. I didn't step into the bay. I didn't look for his shoes under the edge. A nurse with a badge that said E came over with a mouth that wanted to be kind and didn't push past whatever my face was doing. I handed her the envelope and said the same sentence I'd written down. She looked at the package like it might be heavier than it was and nodded. "He's awake," she said. Like maybe if she gave me a window, I would look through it. "He keeps asking for you by your first name." I told her to tell him I was here and I wasn't coming in. She didn't flinch. "Do you want me to give him this now?" she asked. "Yes," I said. And then after a second, "Please ask him if he wants to listen alone." I stood by a poster about hand washing and traced the outline of the continents on the fake potted plant by the door. Somewhere behind one curtain, over a monitor, was that steady complaint. Somewhere behind another, a child was promising between sobs to be brave. I thought about walking away and I thought about running toward the sound of his voice, and both thoughts felt like the most impossible thing I could do. He came back without the envelope. He said yes, she told me. He wants to listen. Okay, I said. And then because it was either that or nothing. Thank you. I didn't stay for the length of it. I don't know how long my mom spoke to the man I knew and the man I didn't. Whether she used the same words she used with me, or if she saved something sharper for him. I went outside and sat on a low wall that separated the hospital from a line of stubborn birch trees and watched a taxi idle. It started to rain, that kind of thin rain that doesn't look like anything until you're already wet. I counted buses. I thought about the first time I saw the ocean and how it looked like a mistake until I understood you couldn't see the edge. My phone buzzed on my leg. E again. He asked if you could come in, she said. He says he'll do it right this time. I laughed. It came out wrong. No, I said, and it didn't shake. Please tell him I hope he listens again if it helps. But I'm not coming in. Do you want to tell him yourself? She asked. No, I said. I've said what I needed to. I walked home with damp cuffs and a damp collar and damp everything. And when I got in, I put all of it over the back of a chair and stood in my kitchen with my fingers pressed to the cold edge of the counter until the ache in my hands was louder than anything else. I poured myself a glass of water and drank it too fast. I slept like someone had turned my body off at the wall. The next morning, I took a number at the civil registry office and sat under a skylight that made the dust look like a snow globe. I had printed the forms the week before and then put them away because the act of writing my name felt like an apology to a man who hadn't asked for one. I filled everything in anyway. Mother's maiden name. Reason for change. There's a box for that. There isn't a box big enough. The clerk was kind without fussing. She asked me 3 times if I was sure. I said yes 3 times. When it was done, I walked outside with a paper that said the same thing my mother used to write at the bottom of school permission slips and doctor's forms and cards. The name that felt like home. I texted Mia a picture of the sky because it was doing that bright, thin winter blue thing you almost don't trust. She called. "Do you want soup or silence?" she asked. I told her I could manage soup. She showed up with both. There was one email from the same nameless account when I finally opened my laptop. Just a subject line this time. I listened. I didn't open it. I forwarded it to the box in the ground and went back to my spoon. A week later, the coordinator sent me a photo of the nurse we'd picked. Halfway through her course, beaming with a kind of tired joy that doesn't pretend to be anything else. I went by the hospital to drop off some paperwork they needed for the fund and found E at the desk. She didn't say your father. She said, "He asked me to tell you he heard her." I told her thank you, and then went to the cafe across the street where the coffee is a rumor, and sat by the window and watched the doors open and close and open and close. I didn't go back in. At home, I took my old IDs out of my wallet, the ones with a name that has a history sewn into it, like a secret lining, and put them in a drawer at the back of the bureau where all of this started. I slid the false panel shut with my fingertip. It clicked into place like you'd want a book to close. Decisive. No drama. I saw my aunt again, not on purpose. The city was doing one of those spring days where the sun shows up just long enough to make you forgive winter and then ducks behind a cloud like it's embarrassed. I was crossing the square when she came out of the post office with a stack of letters held to her chest. We both stopped like we'd spelled the same word at the same time. She gave me the smallest nod, the kind you give a neighbor you shared a fence with for years, and then kept walking. I let her go. I noticed that my hands were in my pockets and not fists. I took that as enough. I don't know what he heard when he pressed play. I don't know if he'll change. I don't know if that's even a thing humans do, or if we just wear our habits better or worse depending on who's looking. It's not my job to find out. My job, I've decided, is to put down what isn't mine and carry what is. There's a new photo next to the cake one on my mantle now. It's my mom and my grandmother at a park. Both of them in sunglasses, both of them laughing like they're trying to outdo the other. You can see my mom's braids slipping loose over her shoulder. You can see the moment right before they look at each other. I touch the frame sometimes when I leave. It isn't a ritual. It's a reminder. I have the name she gave me back. The rest can be quiet. Update 6. The call came on a Monday that smelled like rain and bus brakes. Different voice, same script. My last name like a question. Next of kin, like a handle they kept trying to hand me. She said there had been a complication. She said it fast, like ripping gauze. I stood by the window and watched a man in a yellow coat argue with a ticket machine and said the words you say when you understand and don't agree. I walked to the hospital because the city is small enough to do that if you need to feel your feet earn it. He was at the desk again. Her mouth found that same almost kind shape and held it. She didn't say, "I'm sorry," like it was a password. She said, "He asked me to give you this if you came." The envelope was the cheap kind that leaves paper dust on your fingers. Inside, there was a flat brass tag with numbers stamped into it, the name of a storage company I knew, and a rubber band around a few months of receipts. The debits were neat and regular, back to a year when the world was a different color. In his hand, small in the corner, my mother's name. No letter, no apology, just proof of a task done the way you do laundry or taxes. I turned the brass over in my palm until it warmed and felt less like a thing and more like something that had been held. The woman from the office walked me into a back room with chairs that wanted to be wipeable more than they wanted to be sat on. She explained options. Cremation, release, a box for memorial items, like that would make any of it easier. It didn't. I signed what they put in front of me. I didn't write son in any space, because there wasn't a space for that anyway. When I came out, he was leaning against the counter with her arms folded over a folder in the way people do when they're holding a line they can't cross. He had this on him, she said. It was a ring on a thin bit of medical tape. The tape looped where a chain would go. It wasn't hers. It was my mother's. The tiny notch where she caught it on a cupboard handle was still there. A bite mark in gold. I don't know if I made a sound. I hope I didn't. I put it in my pocket like you would put a bird back in a nest. I didn't ask how he had it. There are some questions that spend more than they pay back. The solicitor's office was upstairs from a shop that sells umbrellas that break on the first wind and postcards of bridges you walk over every day without noticing. He offered me water in a glass that had the good weight of old things and read from a file. Small accounts, debts with the sharp edges rounded off. A note, handwritten, that said only that any personal effects with her in the description should go to me. There was a box under the table with things that didn't fit into any of his sentences. A watch that didn't tick. A set of spare keys with a tag that said home in a way that looked like it didn't believe itself. A throwaway phone, the kind you'd buy when you didn't want anyone to call you back. I took the ring and the brass tag and left the rest to be sorted by someone whose job it is to sort what people leave behind. I went to the cemetery before the clouds decided on a plan. The ground ran with the kind of water that makes worms brave. I put my mother's ring on the nail of my little finger just to feel it there, the weight in the place it wanted to sit. And then I slipped it onto a chain and closed the clasp at the back of my neck. I told her about the receipts. I told her I didn't know what it meant, only that it was a fact, and perhaps that was enough. I told her I wasn't going to spend any more of myself trying to translate someone else. On the way home, I passed the old storage facility without meaning to. The paint is more peeled than the last time. The man behind the glass window has a crossword with all the long ones done and the short ones waiting. He didn't recognize me. He spun the logbook around and tapped the date column and nodded at the brass tag like it was an old friend come back with a new haircut. Been a while, he said. Kept up nice, though. I didn't go in. I stood under the overhang where the rain drips in 3 perfect places because it always has, and counted them until the urge to test every lock passed. That night, I finally opened the email I keep for burying the things that don't need to be read and found that it hadn't eaten the last subject line clean. I hovered over it long enough to see the first 2 words of the body blur into each other and clicked the other way. I deleted the trash. I emptied the bin. I slept with the chain on and woke up with the imprint of the ring in the soft of my throat. Mia texted in the morning to ask if I wanted to walk. We made a loop that took us by the river and back through streets where the bread shop burns the bottoms on purpose and everyone pretends to like it. I told her what had happened in a voice that tried to be useful. She listened like there was nothing else on her calendar. We bought 2 coffees that tasted like the idea of coffee and sat on a bench that squealed and didn't move. She took my hand and laid it palm up on her knee and traced the lines just once, like underlining. I'm glad you kept it, she said. And I didn't ask if she meant the ring or the part of myself that hasn't learned to throw everything hard. The coordinator sent me a draft of the announcement for the bursary's 2nd year. There's a photo of the nurse from last time and a quote that says something simple and true about time and patience. I forwarded it to the box in the ground by mistake, and then sent it where it was supposed to go and laughed at myself for the first time in a while. That didn't sound like a cough. 2 days later, a small package arrived with no return address, postmarked from the old city. Inside was a key I didn't recognize on a piece of string and a business card with my aunt's handwriting on the back. I didn't know he had the ring. I'm sorry for not knowing what to do when it mattered. This opens the side door. You don't have to use it. The house sold last month. The listing photos made it look brighter than it ever was when it mattered to me. I held the key anyway. It was cold in exactly the way metal decides to be and then forgets. I put it in the same drawer as the IDs with the wrong name and shut the false panel with a push that felt more like punctuation than closure. He caught me in the lobby the next time I went to the hospital to drop paperwork for the fund. She didn't reach for me. Just so you know, she said. We played it again. He asked us to. He listened until the battery gave, and then he asked me what kind to buy. I pictured him in a plastic chair with his shoulders rounded toward a voice that doesn't exist anymore except for the part of it pressed into wires. I pictured E writing down AA in a little notebook she keeps for supply runs and forgetting to get a snack for herself because someone else needed one more than she needed anything. I thanked her because gratitude is a form of leverage that doesn't hurt anyone. I walked across the street to that cafe where the coffee pretends to be coffee and sat by the rain-streaked window and watched a woman teach a toddler how to jump over a puddle like it was a country border. In the evening, I took my mother's picture with the cake and the new one with my grandmother and the laugh, and I moved them a little closer together. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Just enough for me to see they belong to the same sentence. The brass tag sits on the dish where I keep my keys and a coin from a trip I took and a screw I keep meaning to throw away, but never do. Sometimes I flip it over just to feel the way metal carries fingerprints for a few minutes, and then lets them go. I don't know if he meant it to be a breadcrumb. I don't know if intention matters when the path was always mine anyway. What I do know is that when I leave in the morning and touch the frames with the back of my fingers like I always do now, the ring bumps the glass. It's the lightest sound. It's enough. After hearing everything, I have to ask, What would you have done in my place? What line, for you, is unforgivable? Have you ever faced something like this? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts.